Good morning. Hope everyone's feeling fine this morning. So, years ago, I was a pretty strong libertarian, Ron Paul campaign worker. I always thought that people should have the power, but in a constitutional way. People should determine who they want in politics, and those people should be sent as representatives of the people to speak for them in Congress and the Senate, for instance. And I felt like taxation was theft when it wasn't voluntary, or when it was exceeding an amount that actually caused harm to the person who was paying it. For instance, for a while during my life, I worked for somebody else before I owned my own business. I was making $5 an hour, which would be $200 a week. $200 a week, even back in 1989 to 91, though it was kind of okay pay at that time, and not bad for an entry-level position. Wasn't enough money to buy what you need to survive, food, etc., and rent an apartment by yourself. It just wasn't. Even though I wanted to live on my own, I was forced to stay living with my grandparents and paying them a little bit of rent every month until I opened my own business. But that's another story. But it wasn't long after that I did open my own business. Anyway, back in 2011-ish, I would say, 12, somewhere in there, I was still in the mindset of libertarianism and smaller government, more power in the hands of the people, more freedoms, less regulations, and I still believe in that. And I had read some Nom Chomsky, however you pronounce his name, and some of his ideals I thought were very appropriate. Some of the things he said, I wasn't so hot on. I didn't care for his super liberal ideas. But I did like some of his statements about big government and what it was doing. And that a lot of corporations weren't even producing anything anymore. They had sent all their work over to other countries, and they were collecting money and becoming super rich and investing in other opportunities and basically taking over other businesses and absorbing them and eventually removing them from U.S. soil as well, or creating so little jobs for the people that, it just never was working out. Not for the people. Detroit collapsed. Big cities were production for, factories and so on, with people working there, making money, collapsed. They all left. They went to Mexico, they went to China, they went to Korea, they went to other countries because of taxation and regulations that were causing them to feel that they needed to run somewhere else to get away from that stuff. Okay, so, in that perspective, I saw huge banks getting bailed out, and, the thing of too big to fail, in a lot of ways, really annoyed me. These things, if in a free market society, if something doesn't do well because it either makes mistakes as a business, and I say it because businesses aren't persons, even though they have personal rights like a person now, and that's what caused a lot of this problem. But if a business makes a mistake and it makes bad investments, then it should fail, and it should not be bailed out, no matter how big it is. And that's what's going on a lot in our country, is big banks, big corporations get bailed out by the government. And truly, they're not just getting bailed out by the government, they're getting bailed out by our tax dollars. But see, if a business fails, and it's not bringing jobs to this country for the people, and it's not producing something that people want bad enough to keep the business going, then it should fail, or it should leave. But it certainly shouldn't be taking taxpayers' money. And so when Trump came onto the picture, and he started talking about giving the power back to the people, and flyover country, and the forgotten Americans, and the military that had been mistreated, and I was a caregiver to an elderly World War II vet, and I saw how the VA treated him. I also, at one point in time, had rode a bus route in a city that was on the bus route of the VA hospital, and had spoken to many veterans on the process of going back and forth on this bus route. And all of them said that the hospitals were horrible, and a lot of times I saw them going back and forth several days in a row just trying to get in to see somebody. So I was very happy, and I am still very happy with Trump's policies. I think the oil independence thing is actually a great thing. Okay, and the reason why I think it's a great thing is because if we are dependent on other countries who do their oil less clean than we do, we're going to constantly be in skirmishes with countries in the Middle East over finances. But you notice we have peace accords in those areas now between the countries in the Middle East, and we're leaving them alone and drawing our troops back. But going back to Noam Chomsky, okay, in a recent New York Times article, he says Trump is the worst person in the world. He's evil. He should be imprisoned, etc. And I'm thinking to myself, what the heck? He's exactly against the things that Noam Chomsky's against. These big corporation bailouts. He wants the people, Noam Chomsky wants the people to have businesses. So does Trump. That's what Trump's policies and all his books have always been about. The first Trump book I ever read, and I don't remember the title of it right this second, but it's basically about how if you follow this program, everybody can be rich. You know? He wants everybody to be well off. He wants everybody to be prosperous. And that's exactly what Noam Chomsky wants people to be. He wants the people to be prosperous and the government to be smaller. And that is exactly what Trump's trying to do with the drain the swamp thing. But somehow or another, Noam Chomsky thinks Trump is the most evil man in the world. And then I read farther on in the article, and it says, oh, well, I read a lot of this in certain economics in this newspaper, and this news is going on. Noam Chomsky is brainwashed like the main populace. He doesn't know what's really going on. But I don't understand how a brilliant mind who can see the evil in bailouts and corporations and all these things that the man has come up with that actually are libertarian policies and not so much liberal policies, classical liberal policies perhaps, but not liberal like socialist, Marxist liberal, even though they call him a libertarian socialist. He's not the socialist in the Marxist sense when he speaks about things. He's a socialist in the sense that he thinks that the American people should be able to not suffer in their jobs. That they should have quality, health care and so on provided by insurance in their jobs. That they should have decent pay for their work. They should have safety for their work. And most of his ideals are brought back to times when people, had really poor work conditions. Child labor, where women were actually getting paid less than men, and where, black people were getting paid less. And people were getting treated differently. But these things have all been resolved in the last 30 years. And so, what you need to be centering on is stuff like big money corporations taking jobs out of the country like Trump is. You don't have to be worried about these equal rights things because those have been resolved. But they keep bringing these things back up. And they do it just to divide the country. And I think I'm going to be running out of time here in half a minute. But I'll put more on this later. Oh, I got 4 minutes left. Okay. So, anyway, I think that it's really funny that somebody who has the vision to see the corruption of the bailouts and the corruption of these big corporations that have basically been robber barons over the years, Carnegie, and the whole incident where he was in Scotland and he was gone out of the country, and while he was gone out of the country, the guy that was running his company basically started a war with the employees and the Pinkertons, and people died during this. It was a horrible, horrible incident. And when he came back, he was appalled, and he tried to get the guy that was running his company out of his company because he didn't want to be associated with that, but it was too late. And so he spent the rest of his life, after he sold the business off for $400 million at the time, which was a lot of money. He sold the business off, and he spent the rest of his life trying to make up for it by doing humanitarian projects like building the library system in the country and schooling, funding, and he did Sesame Street and a bunch of other things. Well, he didn't specifically, but his companies still live on and did stuff like that to help educate children. So, he saw what happened and he was trying to make up for it. And working conditions got better. And I'm not a big union person personally. I've been in a union one time, and all it did was suck the money out of my pocket. And when I got fired from the job because there was an abusive customer who attacked me on the job, the union did nothing for me. So, I didn't find it too useful. And I moved out of New York. But since I've been in the South, I've lived in the South for over 32 years, anyway, a long time, let's put it that way. And for years, I ran a couple of businesses, just small-time stuff, me being basically the only employee most of the time. I cleaned houses, and I had a business at flea markets on the weekends where I sold my artwork that I made and some new recycled items and antiques, and I got pretty good at collecting antiques from thrift stores and collecting them and selling them and doing eBay and stuff like that. And so I made a pretty good life out of that until I basically retired due to some physical conditions that I have with my vision. And I lived off that, and but I could never make the business huge because of all the regulations. They wanted so many things from me for my cleaning business to be like a major business in my area. Like I had to rent a storage unit monthly to put cleaning supplies in that I keep under my sink, that everybody in the world keeps under their sink. It was ridiculous. So I couldn't get a license because when I first started out, because I couldn't afford the storage unit to have them come inspect it. I mean, those kind of regulations just need to go. And so I am against over-regulating. Definitely. But these are just some of my ideas. I posted on the community page a Nom Chomsky video that a lot of it inside it made sense, and some of it was a little libtardy, but a lot of the policy, the information about big banks and corporations is true. No doubt. It's definitely true. But I would think that Nom Chomsky would actually like Trump if he actually understood what he was doing. He was trying to help the people prosper, to help small businesses prosper, to help people who were trying to get back up on their feet and have the American dream prosper, to give people back control of their monetary systems, to give them tax breaks, not just the big people, but the big people who provide jobs, and the little people who have those jobs. I don't understand how somebody who's intelligent can read propaganda